welcome to Edmonton. My name is Randy Boissonneau, and I serve as the Minister of Tourism, Associate Minister of Finance, and Member of Parliament for Edmonton Centre. I want to send a special thank you to my friend and colleague from down the QE2, the Member of Parliament for Calgary Skyview, George Sahal. George, thank you for being here today and for your advocacy in helping us get to this important day. Chers collègues, bienvenue à Edmonton pour une annonce qui est critique dans la vie des Edmontoniens et des Albertains. Une annonce d'un programme qui transformera les vies des familles et surtout des femmes et qui donnera un nouveau souffle à l'économie albertaine. It is my great honor to be able to serve as host this morning for a truly good day for Alberta families, delivering on a core promise that we made to Canadians, one that builds on years of hard work and advocacies from families across the country. What we are here to announce today will mean better, more affordable lives for families across this province. It will open up opportunities, it will grow our economy, and it will lay the foundation for a better future. Without further ado, then, let's get to that announcement. J'ai l'immense plaisir d'inviter au micro une Albertaine, une députée de grande renommée de Toronto. I have the great pleasure to welcome up to the podium and to welcome back home to Edmonton, one of the architects of this historic day. She is an incredible and devoted MP for Toronto, and we also feel a great deal of pride about her right here in Alberta, too. As the first female Minister of Finance, her inaugural budget in 2021 laid the groundwork for today's announcement. Her actions and her leadership alongside the Prime Minister have already helped to create more opportunity and a better, more affordable future for Canadian families and, in particular, Canadian women. Please welcome Canada's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honourable Chrystia Freeland.
Okay, good morning, Edmonton. Hi, everyone. Merci, Randy, pour cette aimable présentation. C'est merveilleux d'être ici avec vous tous pour cette annonce historique. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered in Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting ground and home for many First Nations and Métis people. Early learning and childcare has long been a feminist issue. Canadian feminists have been fighting for it for more than half a century. But COVID-19 reminded us all that it is also an urgent economic policy. Notre gouvernement s'est engagé à investir jusqu'à 30 milliards de dollars sur 5 ans et 9,2 milliards de dollars par année par la suite en financement permanent combiné à des investissements intérieurs pour concrétiser ce rêve de longue date d'un système pan-canadien d'apprentissage et de garde des jeunes enfants. Accessible, affordable early learning and childcare is important to me, not just as a working mother, but also as Finance Minister, because it delivers a jobs and growth hat trick. It allows both mothers and fathers to work, increasing our labor force, which in turn drives economic growth and makes life more affordable for young families. It creates well-paid jobs for early learning educators, and we have some hardworking ones here today who are mostly women and who do such important work. And it gives all children the best possible start in life, helping us raise an outstanding generation of young Canadians. Childcare is critically important to our economy. It is as much a critical piece of infrastructure as a road or a grain elevator or a railway. Now, childcare is important for all Canadian women and children and families. And I'm just thrilled that today we now have deals with 9 provinces and territories Though in those provinces and territories, 60% of Canada's children live. So that's fantastic. But I'm going to confess to you all that today's deal with Alberta has special personal meaning for me. And that is because of two Alberta women. I might get emotional, I'm warning you. One of them is my late mother, Helena Comiac Freeland. She was a feminist in a time and a place when that was really hard. And she was one of the Alberta women who, when the Royal Commission on the Status of Women came out just over 50 years ago with their historic report calling for the urgent creation of a national system of early learning and childcare, she heard that. And she, with her friends, they worked so hard to build it. Well, they didn't quite get there. But I was in the kitchen playing on the floor when I heard them working hard, and I knew how important it was. And so I really want to say, first of all, to Alberta's grandmothers, to that amazing generation of second-wave feminists, you started this work, and I am so pleased we are able to say to you today, we are getting the job done. And I want to mention a second Alberta mother who has inspired me and who I called first thing this morning when I woke up. Her name is Josephine. She's an agronomist and a farmer. She farms with her husband outside Fairview. She's 32 years old. She has two kids, a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old. The Prime Minister, after the 2019 election, he appointed me Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. And so I thought I better go back to the Peace Country and hear what Albertans are thinking. So in January 2020, I held a roundtable with Peace Country farmers. They had many things to criticize me about, I'm not going to lie to you. But Josephine was there. And when it was her turn to speak, she said the thing that was the most missing in her life was early learning and childcare. She said, we have tractors and combines and big machinery. I can't have my kids running around. And I am a key person in this farm. I'm the agronomist. And so when the Prime Minister asked me to serve as his finance minister, I thought of my mother, and I also thought of Josephine and the thousands and thousands and thousands of Alberta mothers like her. So I am so happy we're able to do this. But I think we all know, we're in Edmonton, City of Champions, and there is an important game that's going to be played tomorrow night. And Edmontonians know that to score goals, to achieve something which is big, what you need is leadership. You need the courage to do something big and important. And the person in our government and in our country who has provided that leadership on childcare and on so many other issues is the man whose cabinet I am really privileged to serve in, our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. Monsieur le Premier ministre, à vous la parole.
Bonjour tout le monde. Quel plaisir de vous voir aujourd'hui. What a great day to be back in Edmonton, here in Alberta, with a big announcement that is going to make a huge difference in the lives of Albertan families, obviously, but also in our economic recovery as we move forward. I want to start by thanking the YMCA Shirley Stollery Childcare for having us here today. It's great to be here with, obviously, the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland, Minister Karina Gould, Minister Boissonnault, and MP George Chahal, and excellent as well to be joined by Premier Kenney and Minister Schultz for today's announcement. Parents in Edmonton and across Alberta, you get why affordable childcare matters. These past year and a half has illustrated the challenges that families face and the need for childcare. I think one of the things that really came through on this past year and a half is that making sure we have proper support for families, for proper support for young kids that will allow parents to get back to work is unbelievably important, not just for families, not just for those young kids to get the best start in life they possibly can, not just for moms who are all too often facing impossible choices about whether to be there for their kids or to contribute to their family and their community. But it's also become very, very clear for business leaders, for small businesses, for big businesses, that childcare is not just a social program. It's about growing the economy as well. And that's what has been made obvious over the past many months, and that's why we're so glad to be here today. Les familles méritent qu'on investisse dans leur présent, dans leur avenir. L'économie a besoin qu'on investisse dans les travailleurs de l'avenir, et c'est pour ça que c'est une annonce si importante pour les gens ici en Alberta, mais à travers le pays, pendant que nous avançons avec ces accords sur les garderies et petite enfance. Now, I think people know that the provinces and the federal government don't always get along on everything, and there's always going to be points of disagreement. But I am really, really pleased to be here today with Premier Kenney and the government of Alberta to demonstrate that on the things that matter most to citizens, on the things that matter to the people that we serve, we can get big things done. That's exactly what we've been able to do here today with Alberta, moving forward with a historic agreement on childcare that's going to make a real and concrete difference in the lives of Albertans. Within 5 years, $10 a day childcare will be a reality right across the province. By the end of next year, childcare fees will be cut in half for Albertan families. The province will be creating over 40,000 new spaces in early learning and childcare, and we're going to strengthen and update the wage grid so that early childhood educators get the kind of training, support, and wages they need to contribute in such an important way to not just the present of our society, but the future of it as well. This is big news for families, and it's yet another example of how governments work together to deliver in real, tangible ways for people. Un système de garde d'enfants fort, c'est ce que souhaitent tous les parents à travers le pays. Avec cette annonce aujourd'hui, 8 provinces et un territoire font maintenant ce grand pas. We are so much closer to our goal of lowering fees for every family across the country and creating 250,000 new spaces right across Canada. The fact that we were able to do this with Alberta today is a clear indication that it is within grasp for all families across the country, and I really expect and hope the remaining provinces will step up, come on board, and see that investing in kids, investing in families, investing in businesses, but also investing in the future of our country is what all Canadians expect. We're focused on making life more affordable for families and on building a strong economy, on childcare, on housing, on good jobs for people now and into the future. We have a lot of work to do. And with that, I'm very happy to pass it over to Premier Kenney to talk about the work that we've done and the work that we're continuing to do. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Jason.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Welcome to Alberta to you and Minister Gould, and welcome back to Alberta to Minister Freeland. This is a good day for Alberta families. Affordable childcare makes a big difference for working parents. Through the hard work of Minister Schultz, Alberta's government has secured an agreement with the federal government to ensure that more Alberta parents have access to affordable childcare, and that's a very good thing. This agreement means bringing $3.8 billion tax dollars paid by Albertans to Ottawa back to Albertans to address a key priority for so many families. This means that parents in Alberta will see a reduction in their fees of an average of 50% in early 2022 and will pay an average of $10 a day by 2025-26. The province has secured a deal that allows Alberta parents to have the type of childcare that works best for them, which has been a key element of any deal that this government would sign. This means that all types of licensed childcare for kids aged up to kindergarten, like preschools, daycare, and licensed family day homes, will now be supported through this deal with the federal government. And to ensure that every child has the care that works for them, there's funding for those with specific needs, such as linguistic, cultural, and special learning supports. In addition to private spaces, the agreement includes a plan to add at least 42,500 new licensed nonprofit and day home and childcare spaces over the next 5 years, meaning more jobs, more access, and more of the spaces that Alberta families rely on. This is critical because over half of childcare spaces in this province, uniquely across the country, are in private childcare spaces, with the majority of those businesses being owned and operated by women. Just one of the reasons that Alberta has the highest percentage of women-owned businesses in Canada. This is good news for parents and families, especially as Alberta's economy continues to recover. This deal not only helps many Alberta parents get back to work, it creates opportunities for passionate entrepreneurs to start a business. Our government was elected on a mandate to grow the economy, make life better for Albertans, and to fight for a fair deal in the Federation. This agreement will help to grow the economy and certainly will help to make life better for many families. It also helps in our effort to secure a fairer deal by bringing more of Albertans' tax dollars back to the province. Of course, Alberta will continue our broader efforts to secure a fair deal through the whole system of fiscal federalism, including equalization, and, of course, championing responsible resource development. But today I want to thank our partners in the federal government for having come to this agreement, and I will now like to invite the Federal Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, the Honourable Gould, to please bring her remarks.
Great. Good morning. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you very much, Premier Kenney. I am incredibly proud to be here in Edmonton today alongside the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, and my dear friends, Minister Boissonnault and MP Chahal, for this historic announcement on early learning and childcare in Alberta. As has been mentioned by my colleagues, today's agreement will be a generational game changer for kids and families in Alberta. And I am so proud of this federal investment of $3.8 billion over the next 5 years to provide quality, affordable, inclusive childcare to Alberta families. Des services de garde d'enfants abordables, comme je le dis souvent, c'est bon pour les enfants, c'est bon pour les parents, surtout pour les mères, et c'est bon pour l'économie. Of course, the women's movement has known this for 50 years. And the pandemic has put into sharp view just how important childcare is to our economy. So I would first like to say thank you. Thank you to the women and men who have been fighting for affordable, quality, inclusive childcare in this province for decades. Your steadfast activism and advocacy has landed us to where we are today. And today's landmark agreement will result in fee reductions for licensed childcare spaces by 50% by the end of 2022. On average, that is over $5,000 per child per year for Alberta families. And families with young children, often at the beginning of their careers, stretched with the high costs of raising a family, will see a real, tangible impact over the next year. And this agreement, as has been mentioned, will also see the creation of over 42,000 new licensed not-for-profit public and home-based childcare spaces over the next 5 years. That is in addition to the existing licensed spaces. So for all those advocates out there, for all those childcare providers, this ambitious agreement will continue to need your support to meet its objectives. Et cette entente historique prévoit également des investissements importants pour attirer, retenir et soutenir nos éducateurs de la petite enfance, à qui nous confions notre ressource la plus précieuse, nos enfants. As a parent of a child in daycare myself, I know firsthand how much we rely on our childcare providers to create a safe and loving environment, as well as stimulate the development and early learning of our children. I will never forget the day I dropped my son off at daycare for the first time, and I was much more anxious than he was, which I'm sure many parents can relate to. But any anxiety that we had vanished with the care and attention he received from his ECE. She welcomed him with a warm smile and loving arms, and he didn't even look back at me. ECEs are the heart of childcare, and they must also be at the heart of our Canada-wide system. Et cet accord permettra non seulement d'augmenter leur salaire, mais aussi de leur donner les outils et les ressources dont ils ont besoin pour réussir. Today, Alberta joins 8 other provinces and territories as we build our Canada-wide early learning and childcare system, working towards $10 a day childcare for children across the country. As a parent, a working mother, and as the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, I would like to also take a moment to recognize and profoundly thank everyone involved in getting us to today, and especially Minister Schultz, with whom we had a lot of conversations and with whom I worked very closely over the past 2 weeks. There was tremendous political will on both sides, and I am thrilled that we are here today. J'ai hâte de voir des services de garde abordables, de qualité et inclusifs pour les enfants et les familles de l'Alberta. Je sais que cela aura un impact profond et positif. With that, I would like to turn it over to Minister Schultz to say a few words. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
Well, thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, Prime Minister Trudeau, Premier Kenney, Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, and Minister Gould, as well as our 2 MP colleagues for joining us today. I also want to first thank Nick Parkinson, President and CEO of the YMCA here in Edmonton, for hosting us today, as well as Shannon Durham, President and CEO of the YMCA Calgary, and Heather Gom, President of It's a Child's World Family Day Home Agency, who have also taken the time out of their busy schedules to be with us for this important announcement. I also want to thank the hundreds of parents, early childhood educators, childcare operators right across this province who've asked questions, who've given us feedback and ideas, and who really drove us to sign the best agreement possible for Alberta families. Thank you. Today is, in fact, a good day for parents and kids across Alberta. After countless hours and conversations with the federal and provincial governments, business leaders, childcare operators, parents, and Albertans, we've landed on a made-in-Alberta deal that will support working parents, meet the unique needs of Alberta families, drive economic recovery, and make childcare more affordable all across the province. As a working mom of 2, I do know firsthand how important it is to find affordable, high-quality childcare for your family. I hear this from Albertans every day, from parents, operators, the business community, and of course, working women. I also hear about the importance of choice and flexibility, and of course, affordability, especially for those who need it most, and of course, making sure that spaces are available in every corner of the province for parents who need them. I've also heard from nonprofit and independent childcare operators alike that our mixed market here in Alberta works. that in addition to the fact that fees and quality are not always correlated with private or not-for-profit providers, I've heard loud and clear that ambitious space creation targets needs the collaboration, creativity, and innovation of private and non-profit providers. That is why I fought hard to make sure we had a Made in Alberta plan that works for families right here. So under this new agreement, parents can expect to see childcare fees in licensed programs all across Alberta reduced by half on average starting in January. That is just a few weeks away. And by 2026, the average cost of a licensed childcare space in Alberta will drop to an average of $10 a day. This plan also takes the feedback that we heard from Albertans and makes sure that additional dollars are directed to those parents who truly need it the most. But we know affordability is only one thing that parents look at, and not often the first when choosing childcare. That is why this plan addresses quality and accessibility, because affordability and flexibility are only helpful if there are enough spaces to meet the needs of parents in places where those parents need them. So in addition to private spaces, we'll add at least 42,500 new licensed childcare spaces in nonprofits and day homes over the next 5 years, targeting areas in the province, especially in rural Alberta, that don't have any options for those working parents. We also know high-quality childcare absolutely starts with qualified staff and educators, and this agreement includes over $300 million to support our educators, to hire more, but also to help support their development and training. And our educators will continue to receive some of the highest wages in Canada to support them as they support kids and families right across the province. As I've said many times over the course of these negotiations, Alberta needs a childcare system that works for us. The majority of childcare centres are run by female entrepreneurs or their family-owned businesses, working to make a living and supporting their own families while meeting the needs of their neighbours and their communities. And they not only drive innovation and quality, but they provide excellent care to kids right across Alberta. That's one of the many reasons, again, why we fought so hard to make sure that all existing licensed spaces in the private sector, including those that are still in approvals and construction, are included in this plan, that they have access to supports for affordability, quality, inclusion, and have the opportunity to support their kids and families. We've also made sure this agreement allows parents to choose specialized care for kids with disabilities or unique language, cultural, or learning needs. So again, this is a good day for parents. Parents like my constituent Yadi, who I spoke with just last night. I believe Yadi's daughters are in fact in one of Shannon's childcare programs, and I did run into her while touring her centre. So I asked her last night, why does something like this matter to you? And she told me, as a mom of two, an entrepreneur, she runs her own business in South Calgary, and I remember at the beginning I ran into her, she was carrying her newborn baby in the bucket while going out to meetings to obviously grow her business. And through COVID, she said she wasn't sure day to day how things were going to go, how business was going to be. And programs like this will make sure that she can run her business, support her family, and contribute to the economy. It reduces a huge amount of stress for her and her family, and she also can have confidence that her children are well taken care of, well fed, safe, and growing and developing, but also interacting with other kids, which, as we know, after coming out of the last 2 years, is also really important for young children and their families. This is also important not only for parents like Yadi in Calgary or in cities like Lethbridge, Red Deer, and Grand Prairie, but this matters for parents in Coaldale, Anzac, Hinton, and High Level, all areas of the province that absolutely need childcare spaces to support working parents. And for parents who are trying to juggle working part-time or working from home, they need access to preschool. That's an excellent choice as well, and that again is included in this plan. For parents who have to go back to work early and need access to infant spaces, I can tell you I was that mom, and those spaces are very hard to come by, and those are supported in this plan. For parents who are nurses and frontline staff, those getting us through the pandemic, or those working in industry, driving our economy, who need flexible and overnight childcare, that's why we're here, and this is exactly who this is for. Because many of you have heard me say this before, and I know other speakers have said this before today, that despite the fact there are many things that we might agree with, certainly I have said there are lots of things I disagree with the federal government on, but the importance of childcare for working parents isn't one of them. At the end of the day, we did exactly what we said we would do. I committed to getting the best deal possible for Alberta families, the flexibility to deliver a made-in-Alberta approach. I committed to getting a fair deal, making sure Albertans' hard-earned tax dollars came back to support working parents in a way that works for us here in this province, and today we delivered on that. So to parents across Alberta, whether you're getting back to work as we come out of this pandemic, continuing to work through the recovery, or upgrading your education and skills, we want to give you as many options as possible when it comes to childcare, regardless of where you live. And while the jobs numbers continue to increase and our economy rebounds, I hope today's news brings some additional hope and excitement for a bright future ahead for you, your children, and families across the province. And I certainly hope that while they're here, our guests from the federal government take the time to meet with some of the Albertans whose hard work makes programs like this across the country possible. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Schultz. You made me think of entrepreneurs in my own riding of Edmonton Centre, Jonathan Cruz and Celia Sangalang, new Canadians who run a 24/7 daycare, and they have a fantastic facility for 80 youngsters. Before we head to signing this historic agreement, I just want to say, Minister Gould, Corinna, during this election, every time it was raised, childcare was number 1, number 2, or number 3 on the minds of Edmontonians. And I just want to make sure that you understand that for the decades to come, the investment that you have led, supported by the Deputy Prime Minister, the Premier, and Minister Schultz, that I will always say your name on the doors, my friend, because we were elected in 2015 and you got this done. Thank you for everyone in Alberta for your leadership. Can we have a round of applause for Minister Gould, Minister Schultz for getting this done? Thank you. Okay. Personal moment over. Let's get the dignitaries over to the signing table, and a media availability will follow. Thank you all very much. Merci beaucoup.
Jason, why don't you come up beside me? I think we're probably the ones on the hotspot today.
All right, we're now start the question period for 25 minutes, starting with the floor. First question, one follow-up.
Thank you. Brianna Carson-Smith with Global Edmonton. Premier, what is in this deal that justifies the 6 or 7 month wait that Alberta parents have been waiting for?
A heck of a lot more flexibility to respond to the needs of Alberta parents. This province is different. One of the ways it's different is we have by far the largest percentage of childcare spaces offered by private operators. And they initially did not qualify in the initial deal that was offered. We didn't want to exclude all of those parents. We got what we believe is a much better arrangement that reflects the diversity of choices of Alberta parents. And I don't think any responsible government takes a take it or leave it approach. There are other provinces that have not yet signed agreements. They're working to defend the interests of their parents and taxpayers, and that's our job as well.
Prime Minister, the Premier a couple of weeks ago expressed concern that he and other premiers were not consulted about your oil and gas emissions announcement at COP26. Will you be consulting the premiers, and why weren't they consulted before that announcement?
Thank you. First of all, on the childcare agreement, as the Premier pointed out, we recognize that right across the country there are already childcare systems delivering things in ways that suit the communities and the regions in which they serve. And that's why we came to the table with an openness to flexibility. We were firm on the goals we shared for $10 a day within 5 years, cutting fees in half over the next year. But the creation of spaces, over 40,000 spaces created in the Alberta plan, is the kind of thing that shows that when orders of government work together, we can achieve very big things. In regards to COP, it's been very clear for a long time that climate change is real and requires us to take actions to ensure not just clean air and fresh water for future generations, but good jobs for future generations as well. And that's why we have been focused on working right across the country to invest in the kinds of careers and choices that will be there for long into the future. At the same time, it is absolutely clear that Canada doesn't reach net zero. Canada doesn't reach our 2030 targets unless everyone is part of it. And we need the innovation, the hard work, the leadership, the science, the knowledge of Albertans and folks in the oil and gas sector across the country to be part of figuring out how we move forward and how we draw in that global investment and benefit from the global markets that are opening up for cleaner, greener technology and energy. Je pense que c'est très clair que nous devons en faire plus pour lutter contre les changements climatiques, mais nous devons le faire d'une façon à assurer pas seulement de l'air frais et de l'eau propre pour les générations futures, mais aussi des emplois pour les générations futures. Et on sait depuis longtemps que sans l'innovation, l'expertise et le travail et l'implication des gens ici en Alberta dans le secteur gazier pétrolier qui vont trouver les solutions nécessaires pour décarboniser notre pays et notre monde, nous n'allons pas pouvoir s'y rendre. Alors, nous allons continuer de travailler pour s'assurer que les Canadiens sont partie de la lutte contre les changements climatiques et qui bénéficient de la lutte contre les changements climatiques.
Next question.
Janet French from the CBC. So just to follow up with Brianna's question, what is the process for the timing and the value of this oil sands cap, and will it be lower than Alberta's self-imposed 100 megaton cap?
We have, as a country, committed to net zero by 2050, and in order to reach net zero by 2050, we have put forward a panel of experts to guide, based on the science, the various milestones we have to hit in 5-year increments to ensure we are getting to our goal of net zero. We will be leaning on those experts, working with partners across the country as we do put a cap on emissions from the oil and gas sector and work to reduce them in time to hold the world to 1.5 degrees and get to net zero.
But surely you must have some kind of goal in mind, like is Alberta's 100 megaton cap sufficient, or are you aiming lower than that, and why?
We are looking at all those various things. We know that right now oil and gas production has I'm not going to get into the details. We're working on it with the experts. We are going to work on it with industry. We're also going to work on it with scientists. The leadership that Canada has, and will continue to show on the fight against climate change is not just about protecting the planet. It's about protecting jobs. It's about protecting careers. It's about protecting communities into the future. This is the way the world is going. We are seeing it with global investment flows. We're seeing it with the opportunities to create new technologies and solutions that the world desperately needs. Canada and Alberta will be a part of that. Of course.
Obviously, Alberta is committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and in fact, we are supporting the efforts of our largest oil sand producers in their aspiration to achieve a net zero emissions target by 2050. But I just heard the Prime Minister say that he'll work with advisors, scientists, and industry. I didn't hear provinces. The provinces own the resource, and under the Constitution, the provinces regulate the development of those resources. So I will underscore the importance of collaboration when it comes to finding a balance between jobs and growth and reducing emissions. I think we can find a suitable approach. In fact, the day after I was elected, our government was elected, I spoke to the Prime Minister and indicated our willingness to discuss issues like this, including the 100 megaton cap that Alberta adopted legislation around. I know that Minister Freeland will later on today be meeting with CEOs of energy companies to discuss these issues. And so I would once again implore the federal government to understand that in this federation, major national issues like this cannot be dealt with excluding provincial governments. I think Prime Minister Chrétien recognized that his government had made an error with its very initial Kyoto targets in 1997 without consulting with the provinces who have enormous constitutional powers over these areas. So it is important for us to be partners. We are willing to be partners as long as there is a future for the largest sector of the Canadian economy. That is our energy sector. Prime Minister, I know you will have taken note about exciting new investments here in Alberta. We believe that we're going to be leading the world in the hydrogen economy here. We believe that our liquefied natural gas exports can lower global emissions. We are keen to partner with the federal government on significant increases in investment in the technology of carbon capture, utilization and storage. We appreciate the commitment in this year's federal budget to an investment tax credit in that regard, but we look forward to working with the federal government to ensure that it is sufficiently ambitious to really incent tens of billions of dollars of investment in that technology, which the oil sands companies believe could help them achieve about half of their emissions reduction goals.
Prochaine question, next question. Hi, Julia Wong, CBC News. This is for the Prime Minister. You said earlier that you expect the remaining provinces to come on board the child care plan. Ontario is still holding out. What are the biggest sticking points there, and how confident are you that you'll be able to sign a deal with them?
I have heard from families right across the country how important child care is. I've heard from small business leaders across the country how important it is for them to be able to have child care for their employees. These are things that everyone understands as necessary, particularly as we come out of the pandemic. And I think, as an example today, obviously the Premier and I have multiple points of disagreement on pretty big issues, but the fact that we were able to come together on an ambitious framework for early learning and childcare that directly responds to the needs of Alberta families and ensures that as a country we are moving forward on giving opportunities for kids to have the best start in life they can, opportunities for families and mums to be able to make the choices that are right for them with confidence, and opportunities for our economy to grow once again. I am hearing regularly, and I want to thank the child care advocates here in Alberta who are an intrinsic part of moving this deal forward. But I want to highlight that the extraordinary child care advocates and families in Ontario that have been stepping up over the past months to say that we need to ensure that all families across the country, including those in Ontario, have the opportunity to cut childcare fees in half by next year and bring in $10 a day high-quality childcare for everyone across the province and across the country. It can be done. The federal government is there with the money and the framework to do it, and we're very hopeful that Ontario will do it. Je pense que ce que nous avions pu démontrer aujourd'hui avec un gouvernement comme le gouvernement de l'Alberta, avec qui, bien sûr, on a des normes différentes, mais sur lesquelles on a pu s'aligner sur quelque chose d'aussi fondamental et d'aussi important que la petite enfance et les garderies, démontre que les familles à travers le pays ont besoin de cette solution. Il est temps qu'on s'assure de places en garderie abordables, de qualité, pour toutes les familles canadiennes, mais aussi pour notre économie. Alors, nous sommes là avec l'argent, nous sommes là avec les cibles qui vont être exigées, c'est-à-dire de couper les coûts en moitié d'ici la prochaine année et de réduire jusqu'à 10 $ par jour à l'intérieur de 5 ans et de créer des espaces. Et nous avons hâte que l'Ontario décide que leurs familles aussi méritent un deal aussi bon que les familles ici en Alberta et dans toutes les autres provinces où on a fait ces accords.
Following up. This is a question for the Premier. A number of UCP constituency associations have passed a motion demanding a leadership review within 3 months in accordance with Article 5.7 of the UCP bylaws. Will you support that? Are you willing to face an earlier leadership review?
Well, we have a regular leadership review built into our party constitution, which is a good thing for accountability. As I've always said, I embrace that. In terms of that or other motions, that's up to the UCP board, the party board, to deal with those matters, and I'm sure they'll do so in the appropriate way.
Prochaine question.
Bonjour, Mathieu Goyer de Radio-Canada. Une question pour M. Kenney, justement en français, si vous voulez bien. Vous vouliez une entente sur les garderies comme le Québec, asymétrique, sans condition. Ce n'est pas ce que vous avez obtenu quand même. Pourquoi avez-vous reculé? Ce n'est pas un aveu d'échec pour vous. Vous n'avez pas obtenu l'entente que vous demandiez il y a quelques mois à peine.
C'est une bonne question. Évidemment, nous préférons la même flexibilité que le Québec a reçue dans leur entente avec le fédéral à cet égard. Mais en bout de ligne, c'était clair dans les pourparlers que le gouvernement fédéral effectivement refusait de donner la même flexibilité en Alberta. Alors le choix à la fin, en bout de ligne, était le choix pour l'Alberta était à laisser presque 4 milliards de dollars sur la table ou prendre cet argent qui appartient aux contribuables albertains. Alors, nous avons, dans les négociations, nous avons obtenu une flexibilité plus large, une flexibilité importante. Mais je crois que, comme souvent, nous voyons une fédération à deux vitesses. Et ça, c'est une des raisons pour l'inquiétude des Albertains en ce qui concerne la fédération. Sorry. So the question for those was following up, why didn't we get the same, I'll paraphrase, same deal as Quebec? We certainly wanted the same flexibility as Quebec. Of course, Quebec has had their own program for many years, but they got, I understand, complete flexibility in their agreement with the federal government, which we would have preferred. But at the end of the day, this is the best deal that we could get, and the option was leaving nearly $4 billion tax dollars on the table. We believe that money belongs to Alberta taxpayers. They paid into their federal taxes. We want to see that those dollars come back to support Alberta families. I want to commend Minister Schultz for having driven a very hard bargain to get maximum flexibility to reflect the unique characteristics of childcare in Alberta. But at the end of the day, it's not the only time where we see what appears to be a two-tier federation. I think the basic aspiration of Albertans is to be treated equally, to have the same powers that Quebec exercises and the same treatment from the federal government, which includes unconditional funding when there are national policy goals.
En suivi pour monsieur.
Allow me to respond directly to that, and I don't want to get into a discussion around Constitution or division of powers, but I will say that it is not a question of flexibility that we gave to Quebec on childcare versus flexibility we wouldn't give to Ontario. The goal of these childcare agreements, as stated in our budget of earlier this year, was $10 a day childcare within 5 years and cutting fees in half over the next year. Quebec already has $10 a day childcare right across the country. Indeed, it's at $8.50. So it made no sense for us to impose conditions that they have already surpassed. So it's not about treating one province differently. If Alberta already had childcare at $8 a day across the province, we would have had an approach similar to Quebec. So let's not create constitutional conventions out of this. It's about looking at what families had, what families need, and how we get to $10 a day childcare right across the country, and that's exactly what we did.
En français là-dessus, s'il vous plaît.
La question de pourquoi le Québec a été traité différemment par rapport aux garderies que les autres provinces, incluant l'Alberta, ce n'est pas une question de favoritisme ou de flexibilité qu'on donne au Québec et pas aux autres provinces. C'est que l'accord sur les garderies, les principes qu'on a mis devant dans notre budget au printemps, c'était justement d'avoir des garderies, des places à 10 $ par jour et d'assurer qu'on coupait en moitié les prix moyens des garderies dans la prochaine année. Or, le Québec a déjà des places en garderie à 8,50 $. Donc, évidemment, puisqu'ils ont déjà achevé et dépassé les cibles qu'on s'attend à toutes les autres provinces, on avait une approche distincte qui reconnaissait le leadership depuis longtemps là-dessus, de façon concrète pour les familles, au Québec. Mais je peux vous dire, si l'Alberta avait déjà des places à 8 $, à 9 $, à 10 $ par jour en Alberta pour toutes les familles albertaines, bien, on aurait eu une approche très semblable à celle du Québec. Ce n'est pas une question de constitution ou de fédération à deux vitesses. C'est une question aux cibles qu'on veut atteindre pour les familles.
Sur un autre sujet peut-être moins contentieux, à quel point le protectionnisme américain va freiner la relance canadienne? Quelle inquiétude allez-vous exprimer au président Biden plus tard cette semaine à Washington?
Ça fait depuis l'élection du président Biden que nous soulignons nos préoccupations avec les principes du Buy American qui continuent à mettre un défi particulier, pas seulement sur les entreprises, les travailleurs ici au Canada, mais aussi ceux aux États-Unis, à cause de l'intégration de nos chaînes d'approvisionnement, à cause de l'intégration de nos économies. C'est contre-productif pour les Américains d'amener plus de barrières et de limites à notre commerce entre nos deux pays. C'est un enjeu que j'ai souligné bien souvent déjà avec le président Biden et ça va certainement faire partie des conversations importantes que nous allons avoir plus tard cette semaine.
We'll take one last question on the floor before going to the phone.
Hi there. I'll let you decide who takes this. I'm looking for details on how this child care agreement will actually work. If you're a parent, do you now just sit back and let the savings roll in? If you're a daycare provider, is this coming to you? Do you apply? And what does it look like? Is it subsidies on a per-child basis for these providers? Or someone can explain how it works.
So that's an excellent question, and in some ways it sounds complicated, but it really is twofold. First of all, we want to reduce childcare fees by half in every licensed and regulated space across the province. So this will be done in a couple of ways. First, through operating grants. Those go directly to the operators to reduce the cost of childcare for parents right across Alberta. Secondly, we heard from Albertans that they would like to see more dollars go to support parents who really truly need it. We know that that's going to have the biggest impact on our economic recovery. So we are also expanding our subsidy system, specifically in the first 2 years, to direct additional supports to parents making a household income of up to $180,000 a year. Again, just as it currently is, those dollars flow through to the centres so they can reduce the fees charged to parents. We also have additional supports in place to support flexible and overnight childcare, things that we know matter a lot to Albertans, as well as additional supports for infant care spaces, because we know that that's a really critical time for a lot of parents when they are returning back to work from maternity or paternity leave, and that those spaces are really hard to come by. And given the ratios of educators to children, they need additional supports to keep those spaces affordable as well. So there's a number of ways that we'll be addressing that, and that will continue to roll out. But essentially, starting the 1st of January next year, parents' fees will be reduced on average by half right across Alberta.
And a follow-up for the Prime Minister. The Premier spoke about how sort of the key linchpin that made this deal happen was the flexibility for private providers. I'm wondering how you think that will go over with private providers in the provinces that have already signed on that maybe don't have that same flexibility.
We have managed to get the balance right between providing flexibility right across the country in all the various childcare deals that we have signed that recognize that whether or not a service provider is private or public, for-profit or not-for-profit, Canadian families should be able to pay $10 a day, should be able to get high-quality childcare from well-paid, well-trained early childhood educators. Different provinces have different balances in terms of that, but I'm pleased to point out that the over 40,000 new spaces that Alberta is committed to bring on for Albertan families will be not-for-profit spaces. This is an approach that we have that is consistent right across the country, that, yes, puts the emphasis on not-for-profit spaces, but recognizes that different jurisdictions have different mixes that work right for them, and our goal in this is to ensure $10 a day childcare, high-quality spaces available, accessible, there for families. And that's what this deal delivers for Albertans. That's what the childcare deals we've signed across the country will be delivering for all Canadians.
Thank you. We'll now turn over to the phone. Operator?
Thank you. Merci. Please press star 1 if you have a question. Appuyez sur l'étoile 1 pour poser une question. Our first question is from Tanda McCharles from the Toronto Star. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Good morning, Prime Minister. We understand that Ontario has written your government on Friday, so I wonder if you can share what they are proposing to you in terms of a daycare agreement there, and if you believe you have grounds to reach an agreement now, and what gives you the confidence that any of these deals could not be rolled back by a future Conservative government?
So hi, Tonda. It's Minister Gould. I'll take that question. I did indeed receive a letter from Minister Lecce on Friday. However, as I have made clear many times, we're still waiting for an action plan. So as has been the case with every single province and territory across the country, 7 months ago, the Government of Canada sent a term sheet to each province and territory, basically explaining what our objectives are, both with regards to fee reduction, space creation, and workforce development. We are still waiting on that action plan, and so while I very much welcome the letter from Minister Lecce, we're still waiting for more details from the province of Ontario. And as we've talked about before, Minister Freeland in her budget not only committed to about $30 billion over the next 5 years for early learning and childcare for the provinces, territories, as well as Indigenous communities across the country, but we've also committed over $9 billion on an ongoing basis. So That is already included in our fiscal framework as an ongoing commitment from the federal government. But as well, I will also be bringing forward legislation on early learning and childcare to ensure that this is something that continues as we move forward. And the final thing that I would just say is that I think it would be very difficult for a future government to say that they are going to stop supporting families with affordable childcare. Thank you.
Following up, Tanda?
Yes, thanks. This question is for both Premier Kenney and the Prime Minister. And I want you to speak, please, if you could, about what we're hearing today about not just your leadership review, but calls for a review of the federal Conservative leader, Erin O'Toole's leadership. Why are both of you having such difficulty? Both of you have tried to bridge pretty fundamental gaps in your respective parties. Why are you failing to unify your parties?
Well, Tanda, I don't have any comment about the federal situation, but it's no secret here in Alberta. We've had a very divisive and polarized debate on how best to respond to COVID. This is a province with a lot of freedom-loving people. One of the things I love about the province is those who are want to protect their freedoms and are skeptical about government overreach. And I can understand why so many folks have felt frustrated by the public health measures that we've had to introduce at various times to protect our healthcare system here in Alberta. And those frustrations are being felt in my own party and caucus. There's no secret about that. At the end of the day, it's my responsibility as Premier and the government's responsibility to take responsible actions. We have done that, and I do believe, actually, that the vast majority of the folks in my party are united around our common values and goals, particularly what we were elected to do, which was to create jobs, grow the economy, and get pipelines built, and to stand up for a fair deal for the province. We are seeing Alberta leading Canada in economic growth this year, and we're projected to again next year. Just last week, we had a $7 billion week in terms of new job-creating investments. We saw our unemployment rate fall. We've seen over 65,000 new jobs created in the past 3 months or so. Unemployment is coming down. We've seen all the jobs lost during the COVID era come back. So I'm optimistic about Alberta's future, and I believe actually that most folks are focused on those big issues and not internal party politics. And again, with respect to the federal party, I honestly am not following that situation closely, but it's not unusual after a federal leader loses an election that there's some grumbling. But at the end of the day, I think it's my advice to any party would be that stability is what the public's looking for. You want to comment?
Prime Minister, would you
Yeah,
like to
no,
comment?
I don't. Sorry, Tanda. I will let you ask Mr. O'Toole about the federal Conservatives. I'm not obviously going to comment on internal party issues. What I will comment on is the federal Liberals have never been so united and focused on delivering for Canadians concretely as we've shown today with this childcare agreement.
Thank you, Operator. We'll take one last question on the phone.
Thank you. Following question, notre prochaine question est de Hélène Buzetti, des Coop de l'information. À vous la parole, please go ahead.
Oui, bonjour. Ma question est pour M. Trudeau. Aujourd'hui rentre en vigueur l'obligation pour les fonctionnaires fédéraux d'être vaccinés. Selon le Conseil du Trésor, 98% des fonctionnaires ont reçu 1 ou 2 doses. Or, dans la population canadienne, le taux est plutôt de 88%, ce qui amène beaucoup de gens à se questionner sur la véracité du chiffre. Alors, j'aimerais savoir, est-ce que vous partagez ce scepticisme et qu'allez-vous faire pour vérifier que les résultats sont vrais et que les fonctionnaires n'ont pas menti?
Honnêtement, c'est pas une réflexion que j'ai eue. Moi, quand les fonctionnaires démontrent qu'ils sont plus vaccinés que la moyenne de la population, je tire pas la conclusion qu'ils sont en train de mentir, je tire la conclusion que c'est des gens informés, instruits, qui comprennent à quel point c'est important d'être là, pas seulement pour sa famille, mais pour sa communauté aussi, et que la vaccination, c'est la meilleure façon de passer à travers de cette pandémie. Et je dois souligner aussi que ce sont des fonctionnaires fédéraux qui ont été là avec leur homologue à travers les paliers de gouvernement pour livrés concrètement pour des Canadiens qui souffraient à cause de cette pandémie. Le gouvernement fédéral a été là avec 8 $ sur 10 de tous les investissements pour passer à travers la pandémie, pour aider les citoyens. Et les fonctionnaires fédéraux ont vu à quel point c'est important d'être là les uns pour les autres, de se protéger, de protéger sa communauté, les gens vulnérables. Alors, au lieu d'être sceptique, je suis plutôt fier et impressionné de ce que font les fonctionnaires fédéraux qui ont démontré, qui comprennent bien comment on va en finir pour de bon avec cette pandémie. Et je prends l'opportunité pour rappeler à tout le monde que si vous n'êtes pas encore vacciné, s'il vous plaît, allez vous faire vacciner. C'est comme ça qu'on va revenir aux choses qu'on aime faire. Merci. I will admit that when I hear that 98% of federal public servants are vaccinated, which is significantly higher than the 85, 88%, depending on how you look at it, of the regular population. That, for me, isn't a reason to mistrust. It's a reason to be proud and impressed by the commitment of federal public servants who have been there every step of the way to protect Canadians through measures like the CERB and the wage subsidy, being there to support with public health measures, being there, whether it's through military or frontline support. The federal government was responsible for 8 out of every $10 in pandemic aid flowed to citizens in this pandemic. And the federal public servants were at the heart of that. So the people who've been working so hard to keep Canadians safe through this difficult year and a half, of course they're going to step up and do what is necessary to keep Canadians safe, because we know what that is. Get vaccinated. Ensure you're protecting your loved ones, the vulnerable, our frontline workers, and all Canadians so we can get back to the things we love as quickly as possible.
Mais avec respect, M. Trudeau, je comprends votre argument de première ligne, là, mais les travailleurs de la santé aussi sont en première ligne, ils ont goûté et même eux sont seulement vaccinés à 96% et pas 98%. Alors, la question se pose parce que le Conseil du Trésor n'a toujours pas élaboré de protocole pour vérifier les preuves vaccinales, parce que pour l'instant, ce ne sont que des attestations. Les syndicats disent qu'ils vont probablement s'y opposer s'il y avait un tel protocole. Alors, j'aimerais savoir, est-ce qu'il y aura des vérifications faites? À quelle ampleur? Et sinon, comment a-t-on l'obligation que votre obligation vaccinale va vraiment protéger les gens qui vont retourner travailler en présentiel?
Comme on l'a dit, il y aura des suivis. C'est des attestations qui ont des conséquences légales. Quelqu'un qui est en train de mentir sur ces attestations va faire face à des conséquences sérieuses et graves. Mais comme j'ai dit, je suis extrêmement fier de tous les Canadiens qui sont vaccinés à un plus grand pourcentage que quasiment n'importe quel autre pays semblable ou de nos pairs dans le monde. Et la fonction publique a démontré qu'ils comprennent à quel point c'est important de se protéger les uns les autres. Et ils vont continuer de faire tout ce qu'il faut pour être là pour les Canadiens.
Merci beaucoup. C'est ce qui met fin à la conférence de presse d'aujourd'hui. This is what ends today's press conference.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I'm stopping in to see the soccer.